Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everyone. Looking forward to 2022. God has got great things for us.
Hi, my name's Errol. I'm a member of the Potter's Arse Church, Bristol, a church that I've been part of for 19 years.
My salvation story is quite an interesting one. I got saved when I was young, very young. I was probably about 14 years old when I got saved, and many of you know the story of how I got saved. My mother used to take us to church, and I guess this is the story of many people. So I used to go to church growing up, had no problem going to church, but at some point my mom just didn't make it to be an issue for us to go to church. We could go to church if we wanted to. And I remember my mom started going to a new church.
I got saved in 2002, just by receiving a leaflet on the streets the day before on the Saturday, and it was just a simple invitation, and I, decided to go along and see what this church was all about, see what they had to say, and from that day on the 27th of October 2002, I heard a message about Jesus, and that changed my life.
For the first time in my life, I really felt I wasn't right with God, and I needed to get right with Him. So when the pastor at the end of the service invited people to come forward and to get saved or to accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior, lo and behold, I found myself lifting my hand and going to the front and praying to receive Jesus Christ.
I think I'd been searching, for answers. There's no doubt about it. I think I'd reached that stage in my life where I was thinking there's got to be more to life than what I was doing, what I was about, and sort of had a real negative response whilst attending the church, and I just believed that God just wasn't interested in me, that He didn't love me, that I was too far gone. I actually didn't see any hope, and it sort of made me just think I just need to just carry on doing what I was doing. But that was a remarkable time for me, and my life was turned around, and I've never been the same since.
So you fast forward about 4 years later, and I moved to England. I moved to England when I was about 19 years old, and the person that I was living with, the person that opened their home for us, she had just recently gotten saved, and she was going to Potter's House Church in South London. She said, "No, Prazen, you need to come to church. You need to come to church." And Pastor Carnegie was preaching to South London. Pastor Carnegie was preaching December 1997. I'll never forget that day. If you've ever heard Pastor Carnegie preaching, I said to myself, I need to hear this again. I was just hooked onto the preaching. As time went on, I began to know about discipleship, and I found out you didn't have to go to Bible school as such to be a pastor. And after a while, I really just felt a sense upon my life that I wanted to preach the gospel. I wanted to be a pastor. So fast forward a few years later, I get married. I met my wife in church. Patricia, she was coming to South London Church. I think the first time I met her was probably 2000. Once we were married in church, we got involved in ministry. In November 2008, we were launched out to pioneer a church in Kingston upon Thames, and we stayed there for just under 4 years. It was about 3 years. There was a handful of people which were, it's a family and just a handful of people, but they were established by the time we left. So David Ajala took over the church, and Pastor Ajala asked us to come back to South London as his assistants, which was quite difficult for us. We didn't really want to come back, or I didn't want to come back. I didn't want to go back to South London. I wanted to stay out pioneering. I wanted to see God move. I wanted to see souls getting saved, etc., etc.
Over the years, I've had the fortune of, being ordained as a minister in the church, and got sent out to pioneer work in the town of Slough in Berkshire, and that was a really invaluable experience. And even though I've sort of returned back to the main Bristol church, you know, the 11 years out there, we met so many people, made so many friends who I'm still in contact with today, people that got saved, that are still serving God today. You know, it was just a powerful time. And I sort of miss that sort of pioneering, just being out there and just, you know, just talking to absolute strangers and just telling them about Jesus and just seeing what, you know, God would do, and, you know, seeing what His Holy Spirit would draw them to Himself. And it's been something that sort of really keeps me going, just seeing that. And so, you know, that experience, that doing that work it's just been really invaluable to me.
But Pastor Jala said, hey, you know what, come back, and you know, we want you back in South London to assist. So we went back. We were assisting Pastor Jala, or we stayed in South London for about 6 years. It's quite a long time we stayed in South London. And then Pastor Ruby came and he took over. He made it clear he didn't want us to leave. He said, you know what, he's just taken over the church. He didn't want us to leave, which was fair enough. So we stayed another 2 years under Pastor Ruby's ministry as his assistants. And then in 2019, I remember it like it was yesterday rather. Pastor Ruby, I was driving him to church, and he said, oh, Prazen, an opportunity has arisen in Bristol, and you have first refusal, you know. So he said, no, if you want to take over the church in Bristol, I'm willing to release you guys. So that was sometime in maybe May, thereabouts, May 2019. We then went to Tucson Bible Conference. I spoke to my wife, and thank God she agreed. And then the announcement was made for us to come to Bristol. I was really excited, you know, just to the history of the Bristol church, that we were going to play a part in that.
I'm back in Bristol now, and I sort of, you know, think, you know, what is the vision? You know, I believe that I was meant to come back.
So June 2019, we officially announced to come to Bristol, and then we officially did the changeover on the 11th of August 2019. That's when we formally took over the Bristol church as the pastors, and it's been an exciting time, just learning and looking forward to all that God has in store for us as a couple and also as a church. I'm really looking forward to what God has in store for us here in Bristol.
It was definitely of God. I felt that the time was right. I think, you know, the family were growing. I think my children especially needed to have a change. I think I was pretty much all right about just going and keep going, and that was my sort of attitude. But, you know, you got to listen to God, and God was clearly talking to me, and, you know, just talking about, you know, a supportive role in the Bristol church. And so I felt it was just time to come back, and we've been back probably 4 years, and I believe that God has a vision to use me here and my family. I believe there's such a great work to be done in this city. It's a vast city, a lot of people, a lot of potential, a lot of souls that need reaching. And I believe that God has brought us here for a reason. I don't believe He wants me to just warm a seat and just be part of the congregation, but actually be actively involved with the congregation, what takes place and where we go to next.
Now, when we took over the church, I had all these ideas, all these things that I wanted to do, you know, and then COVID hit us. And we all know 2020, 2021, it's all been about COVID. And for me, as a pastor, it's the last 2 years have been a learning curve, just really learning. When you take over a church, I had to learn what the church is capable of, what the people are like, what they can do, can't do. COVID coming in actually changed everything. You are learning what the church is like, and then there's this whole new thing that comes comes up, and you have to learn. So it's been a learning curve.
I think we've really had a really interesting time over the last couple of years, and with all that's been taking place, I think the spirit of fear has really gripped not just people generally, but even the church. And I believe that 2022 can be a time where we can sort of start reclaiming back, the time, because we know we serve a God who makes up for lost time, and so I believe that it's a time where we can really see God moving in a supernatural way, and I've got no doubt on what He's going to do, what He's able to do. I think 2022 for us as a church here in Bristol is a very exciting time. I think we need to sort of understand what's taking place around us and actually really sort of lay hold of God, listen to His voice, and really just follow His will. And I think that's, we can use these as like buzzwords, but I do think it's a time where, we understand the last days, we read about it, we study it, and it's actually upon us, and the time is short, and this is a time where, I believe that God can do something really powerful with us. So, I'm hoping that, as a church, as a people, my vision is that we'd get into the deep, and that we'd really sort of trust God for who He is, for what He can do in these times through us, because He's chosen us to do that, and to be used for His glory. And I believe that this time is right now. If there's ever a time where I thought, I look back and I think, God's used me in different ways, and I believe if there's ever a time that He really does want to use all of us, is right now. And I think the new year is a really special time for all of us, if we would just hear God's voice.
Coming into 2022, I'm looking forward to what God has in store for us, and I'm going to say this church, it's going to be a fantastic time in the Lord. What God is going to do. There's very, very, very faithful men and women, people that have just been faithful for years. The Bristol church is been very faithful, and the 2 years that we've been here, that's one thing that we've noticed. I've just said to my wife, there's people here that are just faithful. You can close your eyes and they're there. So we really do thank God for that.
I think it's really important that we understand the importance of what our youth can do in this time. I realise, that they're in a very, I wouldn't say timid place, but they're in a volatile situation where just the old youth movement, youngsters in general, not knowing who they are, struggling to identify themselves, it's a really big thing. And more than anything, the ultimate thing is they need Jesus, but the second thing is it's about going out and doing something for Jesus and not being afraid, because at the moment, I think the scary thing is that, people want to fall into line. They don't want to be seen as sort of outspoken. But I do think in these times that we're living in, that we do need to have people. We need to have them young Timothys who are, I'm going to just say it as it is. I'm not going to be dissuaded because of my youth. So, I think this is a really important time. It's a special time. And if the Holy Spirit can, capture our youth, I think they'll do great things for God. I think they'll do stuff that they never even expected or ever imagined they could do. We've definitely got to see youth as, one of the ways forward. I think as you get older in the faith, you get a bit more sort of comfortable. We may not have the same fight, although I still think I've got fight in me, but we need to inspire our youth, because if we don't, who will? The enemy. And he's already at work, he's already got devices in place, he's already causing complications, and we really do need to believe God for our youth and what God could do through them.
We are going to build, that's going to be the foundation for our church, the faithfulness of men and women that we have in our congregation. And for that, I really do want to thank you and thank God for your faithfulness. My prayer, my desire, and the way I feel right now is I want to be a pioneer pastor. We want to see young people getting saved and getting added to our church, and that's my prayer. Say, God, give us fresh blood, men and women that are young, vibrant. We have enough adults, and we have people that are faithful in our church that these young men and young women, if they get saved, they can learn from. There's a wealth of experience in our congregation, people that have been married for years, people that have been saved for a long time, people that have been in ministry, they've ministered, people that have been pastors. So there's all this wealth of experience that I believe if we have new people coming in, they can be properly discipled and they can be properly taught how to live for God. And so coming into year 2022 and going forward, that's going to be our focus, really to re-pioneer and to say, God, we want to re-dig those wells, and we want to see something fresh coming out of that.
I think one of the causes definitely that people need to understand that we're actually really in a war. This is a real battle that's taking place. It's not a pretend battle. It's not just a battle of words, but it's a spiritual warfare which is actually taking place. And we can sometimes find ourselves just being really blasé and sort of complacent about what's taking place around us. And I think it's important that people literally get on their knees and call on God, that people would seek to have the mind of God in these times, that we would come together, and there'd be a spirit of unity, so we just know where we're at. I think there's just so many conflicting things around. There's so many issues which people are not agreeable on, and I'm not saying that we're going to agree on everything, but you can see clearly the handiwork of the enemy operating. And I just believe that if we really seek God's face, we will see a uniting together, that we'll be fighting in the right way and not in the wrong way. There needs to be a coming together, really laying hold of God, understanding that, we're actually called to stand in the gap right now. This is our time. God's got us living here right now to have an influence upon the world around us, on the communities around us, on our neighbourhoods, on our families. He's got us here right now. Not 100 years ago. He's got us here right now, and we need to understand that we've got a specific purpose, and we need to really seek God's face for that.
Jesus already said, the harvest is plenty, the harvest is ready. There are souls out there that are just waiting for somebody to tell them about the love of Jesus. And Jesus said, those people, they're out there. And us as a church, as individuals, we need to have the same mindset that God equip us, and we can go out, we can tell people about Jesus, they get saved, and once they are saved, we can make them into disciples of Christ. Discipleship is not, it's not about making people to be like me or to be like you. Many times that's how we think, I want you to be my disciple. But, real biblical discipleship is we want people to be like Jesus. So we that's what we want. We want to, the young men, the young women, we want them to see Christ in us, and they can see hope, and they'll be able to see the joy that He brings. So that's what we want to do. We want to reach out and to go out into the world and see souls get saved.
Don't know how it is you looked at me and saw the person that I could be, awakening my heart, breaking through the dark. Suddenly your grace, like sunlight burning at midnight, making my life something so beautiful, beautiful. Mercy reaching to save me. All that I need, you are so beautiful, beautiful. Now there's a joy inside I can't contain, but even perfect days can end in rain. I know it's pouring